involved in our life too long. And these guys, did you notice how cool they were? None of them looked back. They just cruising. It's gone. It's history. It's been taken care of. Do you know that today in this service this morning, if you will give it to God, you can walk away from it unflinchingly, knowing it's gone, it's destroyed, it's been taken care of, I'm never going to have to face it again, and you just walk into your future. You walk into your tomorrow because Jesus has already taken care of your past. Somebody should be shouting amen on that. I'm glad He's taken care of my past. It reminded me of this saying, don't look back. Don't look back. You see, one of the things you're going to be tempted to do is as we enter into this new year and you begin going into the days and the weeks to look back at what happened last year. To be a part of those events, to dig up. I think it was Randy Travis that had a song, and I don't know if this was a title or not, but this was in the song, Digging Up Bones, that are better left there. We don't need to be going back there. But there's going to be this temptation to look back and see and remember what that person did, what that person said. If God's forgiven them, we should forgive them. And if it was done to us, it doesn't matter if they've forgiven us or been nice to us since then. We need to bury it and let it be gone. And there's a temptation to go back there. And so we're not going that way, so stop looking back. What happened to Lot's wife? Turned into a pillar of salt. Why? Because she looked back. There was something back there that drew her and wanted her to see what was happening. She knew things were happening and she wanted to see it. And there's a temptation sometimes when we say we're going to let go and let God have something to still try to see what He's doing with it. And we have no business going back there, Sharon. It's not ours anymore. We have no business. I wish every time we look back, God would wave His finger and say, none of y'all business. Oh, man, there's a lot of things He ought to get in our face and say that about, isn't it? That's right. What if every time you done something wrong, all of a sudden God just stood right in front of you? None ya. Y'all know what that means, right? None ya. This world would be a better place, wouldn't it? Because it would stop us from doing and saying a lot of things. And if we were tempted to go back and look back at the things that had happened in our life, if God would just say, don't look back, you're not going that way. This is my plan. This is my way. Walk ye in it. Later on, Jesus told a parable in the New Testament that referred to that kind of stuff. He says that once a man has put his hands to the plow, if he looks back, he ain't fit no more. Why? What's going to happen? He's going to get off course. He's going to begin to weave and wag, and the lines won't be straight. We got to get our eyes fixed on Him. There's a new year awaiting. There's a new day awaiting. And as we're talking about this morning in this message, and we understand the implications of a new year and a new slate, I seen somebody yesterday at Walmart. And they hadn't been to church in a while, and they were just honest about it. And, and I don't point the finger and condemn. That's God's job. I was God's finger. I don't have to point a finger. Ain't that true? You doing something you ain't supposed to do when pastor walks around? God just pointed His finger at you. My nose grew that long, point right in your face. And I'm saying, what were you looking at me like that for? It ain't my fault. And so they begin spilling the beans. Well, I hadn't been, but I said, that's fine, that's cool. I said, the thing is, what's great? A new slate's going to be happening. There are chalkboards being erased. You got a new start. So don't worry about what hasn't happened. Worry about what's going to happen. And so you got a new chance to do this. And so as we're talking about this in the year sense, you need to understand it's a daily thing too. Every time you lay your head to rest at night and wake up the next morning, it's a new day. It's a new opportunity. There's new horizons. It's the same God that carried you through before. He can carry you through that day. It's a new start. That's why it says His mercies are new each and every morning. I'm thankful for that. I don't like numbers. I don't care if when Peter says, well, man, I've forgiven them 7 times, and he said, well, you have to do it 70 times 7. That still ain't enough. If you live a long life, is 70 times 7 enough times for God to forgive you? No. Yet that scripture really has the implication of a daily basis, don't it, John? 70 times 7 on a day. Walk away unflinching. Let it blow up behind us. Don't look back. So my question to you this morning is, what do you need to forget about? What happened in 2017? What do you need to let go of that you're still carrying? John mentioned, I thought he was looking at my notes a while ago. He said, if you're still carrying a burden, what are you still carrying today that maybe happened January 1st of 2017? What's still bothering you today that happened on June 10th? What's still bothering you? What is eating at you? What can you not get away from? That happened September 8th. You see, we all had 365 days, counting this one, in 2017. Nary a one of you would say every one of those was a great, blessed day. Oh, it was a blessing because you lived, but you know what I'm talking about. You know where I'm coming from. It was a day you'd rather forget, but for some reason you still holding on to it. Why do we? I'd rather forget that day, but I remember it like the day I was born. Why would you say that? Nobody remembers the day they was born. I'm glad I don't remember that day. That's like a horror movie, really, for the baby anyway. Pretty scary for the father, too. Somebody said something, you need to forget about it. Somebody done something to you, you need to forget about it. Because the reality is this. If you don't forget about it, every day you think about it, it's happened again. So a one-time event, you still chewing on it. It's still gagging you. It's still bothering you. It's still giving you issues. And chances are that person forgot about it a long time ago. Yet it's still eating at you. A one-time event. Maybe it was a bad time of your life and maybe money got tight and you got worried and things happened. Maybe there were some times you slipped up and you got away from God and you really messed some things up. There was something in 2017 that today is the day to get rid of it. Get it gone, get it out of your mind, get it out of your spirit, get it out of your character so God can begin to do a new work in you. You see, it all starts with us. Don't worry about God. I pray to God they're better this next year. They ain't going to be better till you're better. And you know what? If you get better, they might stay the same and ain't going to bother you no more. We've had issues, we've had problems, we've had drama, we've had sin, we've had doubt, we've had fears. There's been a maze of emotions and experiences that you experienced this last year. And if we're not careful, they will taint the year to come. We get up and you'll hear people say, how are you doing today? Oh, same song, different verse. No, it isn't. Because I got a God that changes everything and makes everything new. We all experience unnecessary anxiety and burdens, problems and pain, things we were never meant to carry. The things that we dread most about in this life, God never intended for you to carry them. They never were meant to even be a part of your life. But sin entered, and because of that, now we go through these range of emotions and we have all these negative things that happen to us in uncomfortable situations. Hurt, pain, sorrow, grief, envy, jealousy, all these things wreak havoc in mankind. We have to deal with them on a daily basis. God never meant for you to carry that. He didn't build you big enough and strong enough to carry any of that. He done it on purpose. You might be able to lift 500 pounds, but you can't carry the weight of guilt. You may be able to outrun everybody in this church this morning, but you can't run away from your past. You see, God never meant for it to be that way. He was the one to carry it all. He was the one to handle it all. You see, life is hard. Life is always going to be an issue. To the day you die, you're going to be dealing with these things. So we need to learn how to handle them. Let me tell you something. I can guarantee you in 2018, somebody's going to tick you off. Somebody's going to make you mad. Every once in a while, something happens to me, and it's one of those days when a lot of things, it's not nothing big, but just a lot of little things are happening, and you can feel the frustration building up. And you're like a teapot about to explode. And it'll finally get to the point, and if we're working that day, I'll tell Jeremy, I said, it's about to the point a preacher going to cuss. It's like the story of this boy. I think it must have been Alan. Alan Mercer. He was going to sell this lawnmower, and he decided since the preacher needed one, he'd sell it to the preacher. And so the preacher buys it, and he takes it home, and he goes to cut his grass this day. The only reason I said Alan, because Alan will sell everything. You drop something on this floor, it's going to be on eBay or Shelby County buy and sell tomorrow. Tax man cometh. Anyway, this preacher gets out there. It's time to cut the grass. The wife says, "Will you go cut the grass?" Yeah, sure. He gets these poles and poles and poles, and it won't start. Man, something's wrong. He checks everything. Everything was good. Poles and poles and poles. I mean, he's working up a sweat. He's got red in his face. He's getting so mad. He said, "I'm taking this back to Alan because this thing does not work." So he gets there to Alan's house. This was not really Alan. So takes it back to Alan. Preacher said, "Man, this thing does not work. I have pulled for an hour. My arm's out of socket. It's just horrible. I want my money back." And Alan says, "Well, it works fine." He said, "Well, I pulled and pulled and pulled." He said, "Well, you have to cuss at it." Said, "You cuss at it and it'll start." Alan told the preacher, because the preacher said, "You know what, Alan, I'm a preacher. I don't cuss. I haven't cussed in 30 years. He said, "You keep pulling, you will." Life, it happens. It happens to Christians. It happens to prayer warriors. It happens to pastors. That's life. Job described it well. In chapter 5, 6, and 7, Job says this, "For hardship does not just spring up from the ground, nor does trouble sprout from the ground. Yet man is born to trouble as sure as sparks fly up in the sky." Trouble's going to be out there. Then Job 14, 1 and 2, a verse that maybe you've heard of. He says, "Man that's born of a woman is of few days and full of trouble." 2018 most likely is going to have some trouble in it. There's going to be days you do not like, days you will not want to face, and it could turn into weeks or months. It's going to happen. But if we learn how to handle them today, of what happened next year, at least we won't be putting something on top of what's to come. We're starting off light. We're starting off fresh. And if we learn how to handle it today, we can handle it tomorrow, and we can handle it every day. How many of you ever procrastinate and put something off? You see, that's what happens to us so many times. Sue, I'm talking about Texas. Every year, I tell myself, this next year, starting in January, at the end of the month, I'm going to do all my stuff and tally it all up. So it's done every month. I tell myself that every year. Today's the last day of this year, and I haven't done it yet. So I've got 3 hectic months in front of me of doing all this stuff and putting all this stuff together because I put it off. You see, and if we don't deal with it today, eventually you're going to have to deal with it. And then it's that much harder. You see, the problems themselves, the issues, the things we face in life, usually do not hurt us and bother us as much as the worry, the stress, the anxiety, the fear, the doubt that comes with them does. It's not the event. It's the pre-event. It's the during the event, after the event, all the mind games that happen. The stress takes a toll on our body and our health and our minds. We come to God and we say, "Okay, God, this is yours." And we begin to pray about it and we give it to God. But as we get up from the altar, we tote it right back with us. How do you know that, Pastor? How do we do that? You've done that. You have not left it at the altar if you wake up the next day worried about it. It's still in your pocket. It's still in your possession. You still have it. You only have total release if you pray about it and say, "I've given it to God." You only know if you've really given it to God when you can go away and you're whistling as you walk away. And life returns to whatever normal's called after that. Then you know you've given it to God and you don't have any more worries about it anymore. But so often we give it to God and we take it right back. Every time you give something to God and you take it back, you're adding to the burdens you were never meant to bear. And because you're never meant to do anything alone, God made you to be dependent upon Him. God says this to us. He says, "Give me what I promised I would take care of, And that's everything. In this word, it's everything. He says, you give me all those worries. You give me all those fears. You give me all those doubts. You give me all those questions. I promise to take care of them. You give them all to me, and you'll be able to manage everything that you're required to do with ease. The book says, to know, O man, what is required, what does the Lord require of thee? But to do good and walk humbly and praise his name. That's really all your part. Everything else is God's part. We was in the hospital. Well, it's a retirement center. Terry's Granny Bass, is not doing well, and we were down there visiting her, and she had to go use the restroom. And because of some of the complications she's having, that's not an easy issue, and she was embarrassed and stuff, and she asked Jerry Ann when she come back out, she said, did you call the nurse to come in there and clean and take care of everything? And Jerry Ann said, no, I done that. And Granny Bass, she was so weak, she just barely whispering, but she said something that's so important. She said, that wasn't your place. It wasn't your job. You weren't supposed to do that. How many times, I wonder, does God look on us and say, why did you do that? It wasn't your place. It wasn't your part. That was my job. And I was going to do it. And I was going to take care of the dirty work, the unpleasantries, the hard things. I want to do it for you, and I'm willing to do it for you. It's not your place. There's so many things that's not our place. We just need to let God do this. He says, I'm looking forward to what lies ahead. I was thinking about that because it could be two implications. You're either looking forward to face the issue, the drama, you don't like it, but I got to face this, I got to meet it head on. It's sort of like every once in a while when we were skiing, you come to this one hill and it's like, oh wow, that's a little bit beyond what I think I'm capable of doing. And you're standing on the edge of that hill and we're all debating. There's 6 of us, and we're looking down at this hill and there's somebody, what do you think? What do you think? And inside you're saying, I hope everybody says no. Because you don't want to be the only one not to do it. And then all of a sudden Jeremy goes, and then Jonathan goes, and then Amber, and then Phil, and then I'm sitting there saying, oh well, here it goes. Today's a good day to die. Choom, and down you go. Sometimes you just got to face life head on. Does that what he means? Okay, I'm not looking back. I'm just going to have to face this and fight it. I'm just going to have to go toe to toe. But then he says, I'm looking forward to what lies ahead. I think he means with anticipation and eagerness. Why? Because he knew it ain't my battle no more. It's not my fight. And I can't wait to see what God's gonna do. I'm looking forward to it. But then verse 14 goes on, and it says something really interesting here. He says, I press on to reach the end of the race. Now there's one of those scriptures you never want to hear a pastor talk about. Because what comes to your mind when I say, you got to press on, brother? You got to press on. So, you got to dig your heels in. You're going to have to put some effort. Your muscles are going to start hurting. You start straining. There's going to be some effort required, right? If you say press on. So Paul says, I'm forgetting what's back there. I'm looking forward. I'm excited about it. But to take this step and the next 2 or 3, I got to press on. Really, God? Are you serious? I don't like pressing on. Because maybe you need a glimpse of what pressing on is. I got a little video I put together for you.
A display of sheer determination. Take a look at this woman who was running in the Austin, Texas Marathon Sunday. Wasn't running for the very last stretch of it. She refused to give up, though. She was exhausted. She dropped to her knees. And when she saw that finish line in sight, you can see with some help, she was able to get up to the end, and she made it across that finish line. She refused that help, by the way. She said, nope, I want to do it myself. She took 3rd place and promised to return next year and win. And you know what? With that kind of determination, I believe she can.
That's incredible.
Did you notice in the video she never took her eyes off of the prize?
Her finish line, yes.
Yeah. All those, are her legs cramping? I can't imagine. I'd look like
That right there was the key to the whole thing. Paul in the rest of that verse says, I press on that I might reach and take hold of the heavenly prize. What's my motivation to keep going? Why do I want to keep going? Just like you said, she never took her eyes off the finish line. She never took her eyes off the prize at the end. What's going to allow you to get over this and be able to walk away from it and put it behind you is getting your eyes on Jesus and just say, Jesus, I just got to get to you. I'm going to wade through some junk. I'm going to be dragging some garbage, but I'm going to reach you and nothing's going to stop me and distract me. Eyes on the prize. Pressing on, forgetting what's back there. She wasn't looking back to see, is somebody about to catch me? Are they going to pass me up? How far have I come? She didn't care about that. She knew where she was going, and that's all that concerned her. You just worry about where you're going and don't let anything else worry you and distract you. He said, and receive the heavenly prize for which God, through Christ Jesus, is calling us. So, Pastor, how do we leave it there? You see, the problem is we like being in control. We feel safer when something's in our own hands. We trust ourselves. We know ourselves. We were driving in the mountains. More than once, Terry was applying the brakes. Our car does not have brakes on the passenger side. If she could, she might have opened the door and tried to do a Fred Flintstone on me. I don't know. When we're not in control, we always have a little bit more fear and doubt. You may be the worst driver there ever was, but you think you're okay. Everybody that rides with you gets scared to death. And then you wonder why they always offer to drive everywhere. They're not being polite. They can't handle the fear. We feel safer when it's our own hands. Why? Because we're afraid of wrecking. We're afraid of having problems. And I began to think of this because there's a scripture that I want to give you, and it talks about falling. And I think sometimes this is why we don't give things to God. In Psalms 55:22, and this is in the New Living Translation, it says this, give your burdens to the Lord, and he will take care of you. He will not permit the godly to slip or fall. You see, when you're carrying something, you are more prone to falling than if your hands are free. If your hands are free, you can balance, you can reach out and grab, you can do all kinds of things to keep your... Matter of fact, between Jonathan and Dale, I didn't know arms and legs could move that far sometimes when they were skiing down them hills. Now imagine if they were carrying a sack of groceries, what would have happened? They wouldn't have been able to do it. God says, give your burden to me. Give those things from last year that you're still carrying, that are still bothering you, still conflicting you, still causing you anguish. Give them to me. Forget about it. Don't worry about it. And I'll keep you from slipping and falling. You'll be able to handle the path you're on today because your arms will not be full. 1 Peter 5:7 says this, casting all your care upon him, for he cares for you. The secret to leaving it back there is that we leave it in the hands of Jesus. The secret to leaving it at the altar is Jesus is here at the altar, and when you come and you lay it at his feet or you put it in his hands, it's his problem now. It's not yours any longer. You've released it. You've let it go. Give me your burden or cast your burden. You see, when we give something to God, it feels wonderful because we've essentially given all the burdens, the worries, and cares over to him. We don't have to worry about it no more. We're doing what Philippians 4:6 tells us to do, and this is what it says. Don't be anxious about anything, but in everything, by prayer and petition, with thanksgiving, present your requests to God. Here it is, God. In all its ugliness, and all of its problems, and all of its issues. Here it is, God. You present it to him, and it says, the peace of God, which transcends all understanding, will guard your hearts and minds in Christ Jesus. Now, I don't know if you've ever thought about this before, but I've always loved that analogy. The King James actually says the peace of God will keep. But in this word, the imagery that is presented is actually an armed soldier at a post. Why do you need an armed soldier? Why do you need that? I think it's because God knows you're going to try to bring it back. He says, give it to me, and if you give it to me, I'm going to give you a peace that nobody can understand, and then I'm going to put an armed soldier there to keep that trouble from coming back in, so you never have to deal with it again. And it needs an armed soldier because it's going to fight to get back in your life. Your issues, your problems, your hurts, your sorrows, your griefs, it's going to fight to get back in there. God says, I'll post a sentry there. But ultimately, it's your house. It's your heart. You can walk by that sentry anytime you want. And sometimes if we pick it back up, we carry it right into the house, and the sentry's not going to do anything against our will. It's our choice to pick it back up. It's our choice to bring it back into the house and in our heart and in our mind. The enemy can't get in there. He can't toss it in there. He can't throw it in there. He can't drag it in there. He can't do nothing. But you know what he can do? He can say, don't you miss it? Don't you miss it? Remember this? Think about it a little bit. And we'd pick up and hold it. And pretty soon we go, and that sentry steps up, says, it's okay. I got it. We walk by the sentry, and it's right back in our heart and our mind again. Never was meant to be there. God says, if you would have just let me, I would have kept them out. To lay the burden down, to leave it all behind, to walk away from it, we got to give it to God. We got to cast it to God. We got to present it to God. And then we just got to forget about it. Hebrews 12:1. Why is this so important? Because you see, the new race starts in the morning. Actually, you could say it starts this afternoon. The minute you leave here, every time we give something to God, the race starts over right then and there. You give a sin to God, you're starting off fresh. But figuratively, it starts off tomorrow. Why do we need to get rid of it? Because of what Hebrews 12:1 says. It says, therefore, since we are surrounded by so great a cloud of witnesses, let us lay aside every weight, those burdens. It's not necessarily sin because it says weight and sin. There's two different things here. There's things in your life you're carrying that aren't sin, but they're hindering you. You need to get rid of them. It's these burdens. It's these issues. It's that memory of what somebody said, what somebody done, what you didn't like, what didn't go your way, what upset you. It's a boss. It's a friend. It's a spouse. It's a child. It's a fellow Christian. It's life in general. It's the hurt of sickness, the pain and drama that goes with tough times, struggling financially. These things weigh upon us, and they will hinder us in our race next year if we don't get rid of them today. So it says, lay aside every weight and the sin which so easily ensnares us and tangles us up, and let us run with endurance. You see, there's another word. It's almost like pressing on. It's an enduring race. It's for a long haul. It's a marathon. It takes a while. That is set before us. Pastor, what are these things? Sadness. Maybe people had to leave. Maybe there was people that meant a lot to you and they're no longer here. It's not that they passed away. There's a sense of loss from that. And you may have lost a loved one, somebody close to you this last year, and you're still dealing with that. Maybe it's sadness because of a relationship that used to flourish is gone. Maybe there's divorce. Maybe there's parents and families split up. I mean, there could be a lot of things. There could be just sadness that just general life is not going your way. Maybe there's hurt, and hurt can be deep. Despair is a big word for meaning really there's no hope. It's just like, what's the use? Maybe loneliness. People can be lonely in a crowd. You can be lonely on your job, lonely at school, lonely at a family reunion. Because loneliness takes place in the heart. It doesn't matter what's around you. Because Jesus is always there with you. But we can be lonely in a crowd. Maybe it's the struggle. Just the daily struggle, the grind of it all. Maybe you need to let go of that. Maybe you've been trying to struggle too much. Maybe there's some forgiveness, whether you need to forgive somebody or you're worried about somebody else saying they should be asking me for forgiveness or whatever. It's going to ensnare you. It's going to weigh you down. You don't need to take it into 2018. Maybe it's drama, maybe it's sin, whatever. It's weight and it's burdens. So what does Paul say at the beginning of this verse, what he does? I got a slide, and I put it up here because I found this saying, and I liked it, and so I got it up here. Phil, if you'll throw that up there. Don't sweat it or regret it. Just move on and forget it. There's so many things in life. It'd be less complicated if we just done that. Don't sweat it. Don't regret it. Just move on and forget it. Walk away from it. Doesn't matter who's at fault, what the situation was. Paul says, I focus on this one thing. You can't be double-minded. You have to make up your mind. It's not going to hinder me no more. It's not going to fight with me no more. It's not going to be a part of my life no more. I'm going to focus on Jesus. My eyes on the prize, and I'm moving straight ahead. I'm going to focus on this thing, and I'm going to press on because it ain't going to be easy. Forgetting the past and look forward to what lies ahead. I don't have a Bible that's the Message in it, and so I actually typed this out because I don't use the Message hardly at all, but every once in a while, the way it says it is just perfect. And as we get ready to start closing this morning, I wanted to use this because this sums up the whole service this morning of what we need to do to get us in position to start off next year. And Isaiah 43, verses 14 through 21, this is the way it reads in the Message. God, your Redeemer, the Holy of Israel, says. I love it when my God says stuff. Because when God says something, it's going to happen. When God says something, it means something. When God says something, it carries weight. And when God's telling them, you tell them, I said it. Now, if you've ever told your kids, say something like, let's say you've got more than one kid, and you say, go tell your brother to clean his room. Now, if that was told to Amber, she's going to go in there, and she's going to act like she's 10 foot tall. Clean up your room. What's Jeremy going to say? Who said? If she says, I do, anything will happen? No. What if she says, Mama said? Well, that might put some pressure, but if she says, Daddy said. Or if I said, Amber, go tell Jeremy, I said, all of a sudden that carries some weight with it. There's some authority behind that. There's some consequences that are going to happen. There's something. So when God says to his prophets or his inspired writer, you tell them, I said. That their God, their Redeemer, the Holy One of Israel says, and you know what the first words out of his mouth in the message? Just for you. Just for you. Your God loves you this morning, and he does things just for you. He says, just for you, I will march on Babylon. That's the enemy. That's Satan. That's the evil side. That's the things that are hindering you and hampering you. I will march on Babylon, and I will turn the tables on the Babylonians. And this is why sometimes I love the Message, because it's just got, they've actually pulled it up there. I like this, because this is East Texas talk. Instead of whooping it up, they're going to be crying. We're going to be wailing. The enemy that thought he had you is now going to be in the grips of the Almighty God. That issue that was burdening you down and carrying you, he said, just for you, I'm going to come in here and I'm going to turn the tables on him. What he wanted to do for bad, I'm going to turn it into good. And instead of him having a party, he's going to be crying. That should excite the child of God. God's doing it just for you. He says, this is why I am God, your Holy One, the Creator of Israel, your King. This is what God says, the God who builds a road right through the ocean. The man can't even do that. There's the Atlantic Ocean. What you going to do? God says, I'll have to put a road right through it. How are you going to do that? We're going to get a committee. We're going to get architects. God says, I just go, and the water's going to part. And up to 2 million people are going to walk across a road I just built in the middle of a sea. And say hi to Dory as you go by. Who carves a path through the pounding waves. The God who summons horses and chariots and armies. They lie down and they can't get up. They're snuffed out like so many candles. God's saying, this is the kind of stuff I'm going to do. If you'll give your burden to me, if you'll allow me to fight your fights, if you'll allow me to take care of it. And then this is the most important part of it, just plain old English. He says, forget about what's happened. Don't keep going over old history. Wow. That's old history. If it happened an hour ago, it's old history. Give it to God. Forget the past. Stop going over old history. But God, but nothing. but God, but nothing. It's old history. God don't even want to hear it. You know, he's telling them because you know what they were doing? They kept going to him. You see how much he is like us parents? I've said that kind of stuff. I'm tired of you saying that. Don't say it no more. It's not changing anything. Don't say another word. But God is telling me, you keep coming and complaining. I've done all these things. Forget about the past. Don't keep going over the old history. Throw them records away, throw them papers away, throw them documents away, throw the etchings away. Get rid of all of it, because I'm not concerned about last week, last month, last year, 10 years ago. I'm concerned about me and you right here, right now. What are you going to do today? I don't care what happened 6 months ago in 2017. He says, because I've taken care of that, and if you'll let me, it'll never face you again. And I've got a new path. I'll carve out roads and oceans for you. He says, be alert, be present. What's that mean? Right here, right now. Pay attention to this moment. I'm about to do something brand new. I don't know about you. Ooh, that gives me some goosebumps. When I hear my God saying, get ready, it's about to happen, I'm about to do something brand new, he goes on, it's bursting out. Don't just see it. There it is. I found it, in the words of Jordan. There it is. We get so hung up in the past and what's happened, we can't see what God's trying to do right here, now, today. Forget about it. I've got something right here. But God back there, I don't care. Look at this. It's amazing. It's life-changing. It's enemy-destroying. It's uplifting. Can't you see it? There it is. But God back here. He ought to just slap you. I wish God did slap us sometimes. You've watched that movie with the hysterical woman. Oh, we're going to die! Oh, what are we going to do? We're going to die! And you're just saying, oh, somebody slap her or something. Finally, somebody, bam! Immediately, she comes to her senses and she's okay. Aren't you glad God's more patient with you? How many times in your life have you looked like a chicken with your head cut off, running around? But God, but God, but God. That sounds like a chicken. But God, but God, but God, but God, but God, but God. I didn't think of that. That's just one of those instant things, Anthony. That's just Pastor Steve. I said it, and it sounded like a chicken, don't it? But God. Watch out, Poultry Festival next year. I'm winning the clucking contest. I told you, God's good. He's amazing. I don't care about that. There's something new. I'm going to do something amazing right here, right now, if you'll let me. Get your eyes off of that. Get your eyes off of that. Get your heart and your mind off of that. Get it on me right here, right now. I'm making a road through the desert, rivers in the Badlands. Wild animals will say thank you. The coyotes and the buzzards. Because I provided water in the desert. Rivers through the sun-baked earth. Drinking water for the people I choose. The people I made especially for myself, a people custom made to praise me. Don't let 2017 be a part of your future. Yeah, there was some good times, and it don't hurt to remember those good times because he'll give you strength for the bad times that are to come. But too often, we carry the weight and the load and the issues of all the bad that's happened, and it ruins today. It takes away the hope of tomorrow. The message title was Leave It All Behind. What do you need to leave behind? What do you want to make sure is not a part of this next year? What's the worst thing that happened in 2017 that you'd say, I don't want it to happen again. I don't want it to repeat itself. I don't want this to be something I face again. The best way to ensure that not to happen is to do what Paul just said. Forget the past. Look forward. Press on. Get your eyes on the prize. What's the most important thing? What's most important? Don't pick it back up. Destroy it. One last video to close us out, and then we're going to end in prayer this morning. Thank you for being patient. When I was contemplating all the different ways of wording this, and I was praying and seeking God, one of the things that kept coming to my mind was leave it there. You got to leave it there. And I've been as guilty as anybody else of trying to handle things too long. You say you give it to God, you say you're praying about it and all that, but really and truly we're dealing with it too much ourselves. It's not easy to just take something and leave it. And this is a song called Leave It There, and it explains some things on the screen, but it's a powerful song, and it's done at the beginning by Joey and Rory Feek. I hope you enjoy it.
Leave it there, leave it there. Take your burden to the Lord, oh, and leave it there. If you trust Him through your doubt, He will surely bring you out. Take your burden to the Lord, leave it there. If the world from you withhold of its silver and its gold, and you have to get along with meager fare, just remember in His word how He feeds the little birds. Take your burden to the Lord, leave it there. Leave it there, leave it there. Take your burden to the Lord, oh, and leave it there. If you trust Him through your doubt, He will surely bring you out. Take your burden to the Lord, leave it there. If your body suffers pain and your health you can't regain, and your soul is slowly sinking in despair, Jesus knows the pain you feel. He can save and He can heal. Take your burden to the Lord, leave it there. Leave it there, leave it there. Take your burden to the Lord, oh, and leave it there. If you trust Him through your doubt, He will surely bring you out. Take your burden to the Lord, leave it there. Take your burden to the Lord. Leave it there, leave it there.
Guys, if you'll cue that up and let it play slowly again. Everybody stand as we get ready to close this morning. I actually sent the wrong video, but evidently God wanted that one. Of course, some of you realize that wasn't Joey and Rory Feek, but what I want you to know is this. She sang and recorded this song, and it meant a lot to her. 2 years, I think it was, after she recorded this song, she was diagnosed with cervical cancer. Most of the people in the country world and a lot of people through Facebook and everything followed the events that occurred after that, which ended up in her death. She died in March of 2016. One of her wishes before she died was that that song would be played at her funeral. And she wanted that young man, Bradley Walker, to sing it. Bradley Walker was born with muscular dystrophy, been in a wheelchair his whole life. They had met, her and Rory had met him and encouraged him and signed him to their record label and was helping him out. And so she asked, will you sing that at my funeral? That was at her funeral. She was buried on the family farm. Small wooden cross, just says Joey Feek on it. They were underneath that tree. Thought about that after I was looking that up. She wanted that sung because she said there's only going to be one way you can move on in life. You got to take these things to God and leave them there, John. It doesn't matter if it's last year, if it's yesterday, if it's a moment ago. Paul says you got to forget the past. Whatever's behind you, don't go back to it. God's a God of now and here and what He's doing and explosively doing in your life today. It's not about yesterday. And while she's dying of cancer and it's robbing her of her strength and her body's getting weak and frail and she's losing all the weight, she's losing her hair, she begins to think, I know my family, my friends, they can't handle this. There's only one way. That song I recorded a few years ago, they got to learn to take it to God and leave it there. It's the only way they can move on. And then I began to think about Bradley Walker singing it. In a wheelchair his whole life. He has a lot of things to complain about and reason to look back and say, look how hard my life's been. It even says in the song, right here, if your body suffers pain. We reckon those words might have been hard for him to sing. God, I've been in a wheelchair all my life. I could have done so much more. He had learned to take it to God and leave it there. You can't live in today if you got the problems of yesterday following you around. So this morning, with every head bowed and every eye closed, you would say, Pastor, and this isn't about telling what you need to leave behind, but you would just raise a hand today and say, Pastor, there's definitely at least one thing, and there might be a whole bunch of them, that I need to leave behind in 2017. Could I see your hand this morning? Thank you. Thank you. A little over 50% of you said there's something I don't need to take into 2018 with me. You don't have to. We're fixing to take it to God in prayer right now and leave it behind. I'm going to go ahead and say this prayer. You just pray in your own way. It's a little bit late and we're coming back tonight, so I'm not going to ask you to come to the front. But just pray in your own way. Guys, just let the music keep playing. Crank it back up while I pray. Dear Heavenly Father, God, I am so thankful you are a God that doesn't remind me of my past. Whether it's my fault or someone else's fault. God, when things go wrong in my life, you're the God that promises me it will get better, that you have a plan for me. God, what do you require of me? How do I get from here to there? God, it's by walking away from it. Leaving it behind me. Focusing on this one thing. Forgetting that which is past and gone and already happened. It's old history. Forget the old history. And God, looking forward to what lies ahead, the new thing, the thing that's about to burst open. God, what you're trying to direct my attention to. God, help me get my eyes on you this morning. And God, I understand there's going to be times it's going to be hard. I'm going to have to press on. It's going to be the toughest thing I ever done. It's going to hurt. It's going to be a struggle. But God, the promises are real that you will help me. You will even carry me when my strength fails. I just got to focus on you. God, can 2018 be different than 2017 for many people here today? Yes, it can. And the answer's in what we've described all day. It's your words. It's your promises. God, if we will just give to you what you've promised to take care of, what's left is light, and we can handle it. Thank you so much for it.